I worked at a sleep research facility a few months ago. I was 32 and took the job to pay off my student loans. I thought the quiet hours could help with my insomnia. The building was a stark concrete structure on the edge of town. It was dimly lit, with labs filled with medical equipment. I wanted a fresh start away from the city, but I can't forget what happened there. The first 2 nights went fine. I logged patients in for their sleep studies and monitored the equipment. I didn't expect anything strange. But on my third shift, I saw her, a woman in her late 30s. She was awake, staring at me through the one-way glass. Her calmness was unsettling. I thought maybe it was just sleep deprivation getting to me. As the nights passed, I noticed more odd things. I heard soft murmurs from the soundproof rooms, but I couldn't understand the words. My coworkers laughed it off. "It's just your imagination," they said. But it felt more serious than that. The lights flickered, and machines malfunctioned without reason. She kept staring at me. Each night, her gaze felt more intense. I tried not to think about it, but something was off. One night, as I walked down the narrow hallway, I heard a low whispering sound, almost like a chant. My heart raced as I crept closer. I wanted to know where it came from. But when I reached the nearest lab, the sound stopped. It was like the whispers knew I was coming. Then I saw her again. She looked different. Her eyes were almost burning into me. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't respond. I got chills. I looked away, trying to walk back down the hall. I told myself it meant nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something more. The next night, things escalated. Participants reported strange dreams. They shared odd stories, dreams that didn't make sense. I started to hear the murmurs more clearly. They came from everywhere and nowhere. It scared me. I couldn't shake the idea that it was connected to her. Then one night, right before my shift ended, I heard her voice. "Why are you watching me?" I spun around, but no one was there. The hallway was empty, the lights dancing in the dark. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. The air felt thick with something I couldn't understand. I rushed to my car after work. I drove home in silence, but I felt something following me. It was all too strange. That facility wasn't what it seemed, but I didn't know how to explain it. I still can't forget her eyes, piercing through the glass, making me wonder if I was the one being studied all along. I don't think I'll ever find out what really happened. The next night, I returned to the facility, my heart pounding from a mix of fear and curiosity. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the hallway. I could still hear her voice echoing in my mind, her question haunting me. "Why are you watching me?" As I settled into my shift, I tried to push the thoughts aside. I focused on the monitors, keeping an eye on the patients. But it was impossible to ignore the tension in the air. My coworkers were acting normal, joking amongst themselves. I felt out of place, like I was in a dream that didn't quite make sense. Around midnight, I was alone in the lab when I heard it again. The whispers. This time, they were louder, clearer. I stood frozen, straining to decipher the murmurs. They sounded familiar, almost like they were calling my name. I couldn't tell where they were coming from, but my instincts screamed at me to investigate. Steeling myself, I followed the sounds down a winding corridor. The walls felt like they were closing in. As I neared the source, the whispers faded to silence, replaced by a chilling stillness. I hesitated, glancing back toward the main area. Was I really ready to confront whatever this was? Then I saw a faint glow coming from one of the observation rooms, the one she inhabited. My stomach knotted as I stepped closer. The door was slightly ajar. With a shaky hand, I pushed it open. Inside, the room was empty, but the monitor displayed streams of data fluctuating wildly. The screen buzzed with activity as if the patient was still there, even if she wasn't. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I shouldn't be in there. As I approached the monitor, the word "sleep study in progress" blinked repeatedly, more frantic than before. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the air grew thick. Panic surged through me. I turned to leave, but as I did, I heard a loud crash from behind that I whipped around, heart racing. Someone was there, standing in the shadows. The figure shifted and stepped into the light. It was her staring at me again, eyes wide and intense. I felt paralyzed. "Why are you here?" she whispered, voice low but sharp, cutting through the silence with a desperation I hadn't expected. "You need to leave, before it's too late." A wave of dread washed over me. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, but she didn't answer. Instead, she reached out as if trying to grab me. I stumbled back, knocking into the table. My mind raced what was happening. I had to get out. As I turned to flee, the lights flashed one last time before everything went dark. I was plunged into a silence deeper than I'd ever known, broken only by my own panicked breathing that I fumbled for the door, heart pounding in my chest. But when I reached for the handle, a cold, clammy hand gripped my wrist. I froze, a scream trapped in my throat. The whispers returned, now echoing all around me like a chorus. The last thing I saw before everything swallowed me was her face, a mix of fear and urgency, as if she tried to warn me about something I couldn't understand. Then everything went silent. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my vision, but it was still dark. The silence pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Panic clawed at my chest, and I forced myself to focus. Was I still in the observation room? Gradually, my senses adjusted, and a dim light flickered back to life overhead. It flickered again, threatening to go out. I was back in the lab, but something felt wrong. My wrist still tingled where her icy grip had locked around it. I turned and found the room empty, save for my own reflection in the adjacent glass wall. That I stumbled back, unsure of whether to scream or cry. I needed to find answers to understand what had just happened. I glanced at the monitors, but the data had returned to normal. The sleep study in progress message vanished. As if nothing strange had just unfolded, that I rushed back to my station, shaking off the fear that threatened to consume me. My coworkers would start arriving in just a few hours, but the memory of her haunted eyes lingered. What was she warning me about? My gut told me I needed to dig deeper. I pulled up her data from the previous night. Her name, only a number on the screen, patient 3782. I scanned through the reports, each note more alarming than the last. Sleep patterns shot in unpredictable spikes, hallucinations, and an alarming amount of time spent in REM sleep. There was something they hadn't told me. Something important. Just then, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. My heart raced again as I faced my supervisor, Dr. Harlow. "You're still here?" he asked, surprised but not suspicious. "I thought I told you to go home." I heard something. I stammered, my mind racing. "About patient 3782. There's something wrong with her study." Dr. Harlow's expression hardened. He walked closer, leveling his gaze at me. "You need to trust the process. Patients like 3782 often exhibit unusual behaviors. It's part of the research." His dismissive tone sent a chill down my spine. "But what if she's in danger? What if enough?" He cut me off, raising a hand. "You're not a doctor. You need to focus on your shifts and stay out of this. Let the professionals handle it. I can't just ignore what is happening." I shouted, strength rising within me. "She was warning me, Dr. Harlow. I saw her. She wasn't just a number." His eyes narrowed, and I could see the flicker of fear etched in the lines of his face. "Don't say that again." The tension thickened, and I knew I was onto something. Suddenly, my phone buzzed wildly in my pocket. I pulled it out, but the screen flashed in no service. Confused, I looked back at Dr. Harlow, only to see him staring at me with an intensity one hadn't seen before. "Listen to me," he said, his calm demeanor returning. "Forget everything you think you saw. Just focus on your duties. If you don't, you could put us all at risk." Before I could respond, he turned and left the room, leaving me with 1,000 questions swirling in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. That's when I noticed something on the monitor again, a glitch in the data, something different about patient 3782 status. Unknown variable detected. My heart sank. I realized then that I now had to choose follow orders and let the mystery deepen or dive headfirst into the unknown, risking everything. Just as I made my decision, the lights flickered again, and the whispers returned, louder this time. The whispers swelled around me, echoing off the cold lab walls. I pressed my hands to my ears, but they seeped through, sharp and frantic. I had to know what was happening, and I had to know it now. I turned back to the monitors, squinting at the data. Unknown variable detected. The phrase jabbed at me like a needle. My heart raced as I searched for more details. It didn't take long for an idea to take shape in my mind. I needed to run a deeper diagnostic to see if I could uncover what Dr. Harlow was hiding. I typed rapidly, ignoring the tremor in my hands. The screen blinked, and the system flickered a warning: insufficient permissions. Frustration twisted inside me. What was Dr. Harlow afraid I would find? I needed to risk it. All this wasn't just about data anymore. It was about a person. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. I gasped, frozen for a moment. The only sound was my ragged breath. Panic surged anew. Then the emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the lab. I glanced toward the door. Was someone there? I grabbed my phone, but it was still useless. I took a deep breath and began to move toward the exit. Just as I reached for the doorknob, I heard its soft, raspy cries coming from down the hallway. A chill ran down my spine as I hesitated. Was someone in pain? A patient? Or was it just another trick of my mind? I gathered my courage and stepped out into the corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the sterile white walls. My footsteps echoed as I followed the sound. Help! The voice was faint, but unmistakable. It was her patient 3782. I rushed toward the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. It led me to a door at the far end of the hallway, marked restricted access. A sense of dread washed over me. I knew I shouldn't be here, but the cries pulled me forward like a magnet that I pushed the door open slowly. It creaked on its hinges, and inside, I found a room filled with machines. Monitors flashed erratic patterns, and wires snaked across the floor. In the center of the room lay patient 3782, strapped to a bed, eyes rolling back in her head as if trapped in a nightmare. "Help me," she gasped, her voice hoarse. I stumbled forward, but a sudden clicking noise made me freeze. Dr. Harlow stood in the doorway, a cold smile on his lips. "I told you to stay away," he said, his tone dripping with warning. "You shouldn't have come here." The air felt heavy, charged with tension. I was lost in his gaze, fear creeping up my spine again. "What are you doing to her?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. He stepped forward, blocking my path. "You really should listen to orders, especially when it comes to the subjects in our care." I glanced back at the patient, her thrashing intensifying. I felt the pulse of urgency and dread mixing. I had to save her before it was too late. But then everything changed. The lights flickered violently before plunging us into complete darkness once more. And then, I heard something else, a loud crash followed by silence. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know when it would come back, but I had to act. I needed to find a way to help her. Suddenly, I felt a presence beside me. Heart racing, I turned my head. A figure stood just out of reach, shrouded in shadows. My skin prickled as I tried to make out their face. But before I could react, the lights flickered back on and she was gone. I stumbled, blinking in disbelief as I scanned the room. The bed was empty. Just moments ago, patient 3782 had been there, her eyes wild with fear. Now, the room felt impossibly still, the only evidence of her presence being the straps that lay loose against the sheets. "Where is she?" I whispered to the shadows, feeling the rising panic in my chest. My heart was pounding painfully loud, and dread clawed at my insides. I turned quickly, trying to make sense of it all. Dr. Harlow was still blocking the door, his smile now tinged with something darker. "You've made a grave mistake, sneaking around like this." "Where did she go?" I shot back, defiance pushing through my fear. I didn't care about the danger any longer. I had to know what was happening. "What are you experimenting on?" He chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "You wouldn't understand. Some doors are better left closed." I looked around, desperation striking me. I was trapped, cut off from the rest of the facility. The monitors continued to glow, their chaotic patterns mesmerizing and unsettling. When I saw a flicker of movement in the corner of the room. I barely caught it, but I knew I wasn't imagining things. I stepped closer to the wall, heart racing, and there it was again. A figure, almost translucent, darting just beyond the reach of the light. "Stop! Come back!" I shouted, instinctively lunging towards it. But as I did, the lights faded once more. The cacophony of the machines faltered and went silent, leaving only the sound of my ragged breath. "Foolish girl," Harlow hissed, his voice echoing in the dark. "You'll regret this." I could feel the walls closing in on me, the air thick and suffocating. Whatever was happening felt like it was spiraling out of control. I turned to him, ready to confront the reality of this nightmare. "I won't let you hurt anyone else," I declared, trying to summon the strength to stand my ground. Just then, a low hum filled the space, vibrating through me. The lights flickered back on, but now the room was different. Machines buzzed erratically, the screens sputtering and flashing warning signs. And then I noticed her patient 3782 back on the table. But she was different. Her eyes were wide open, yet vacant, and a strange glow surrounded her. "Help me," she rasped again. But this time, there was something more sinister in her tone that I took a step back. This wasn't right. Whatever Dr. Harlow had been doing, it was far beyond anything I could comprehend. Dr. Harlow now loomed over her, activating devices around her. "This is beyond your understanding. You don't know what we're capable of," he hissed, his intensity igniting an alarm in my chest. I had to get her out, but my mind raced with confusion and fear. The stakes felt higher, the air crackling between Harlow's madness and the mystery of patient 3782. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the floor beneath me trembled. The walls shook, and the emergency alarms blared to life, harshly piercing the quiet. Someone was coming. I glanced at the door I had entered. My escape route was right there, but could I leave her? Could I abandon her to whatever horrors they had planned? And in that moment of hesitation, I knew the nightmare was just beginning. I felt an overwhelming urge to run. My instincts screamed at me, but I couldn't just leave. I couldn't abandon patient 3782, even if it felt like she was no longer the person I'd seen earlier. With my heart racing, I prepared to make a choice. Dr. Harlow moved 2 steps closer, his face twisted with malice. "You have no idea the power we're unraveling," he warned. "You could join us. You could be a part of something greater." "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "You're hurting her." The humming grew louder, vibrating through the floor and rattling my bones. Was this facility really capable of such horrors? I could feel the weight of dread bearing down on me, but I forced myself to look back at patient 3782. Her gaze seemed to pierce through me, a mix of pleading and something darker, a void behind her eyes that sent shivers down my spine. "Help me," she said, but the word carried a robotic quality now, almost rehearsed. The glow around her flickered like a dying flame, and I hesitated for a moment longer. I desperately searched for something I could use to help her. When I noticed the control panel beside Harlow. It was crowded with buttons and switches, and a green LED flickered ominously. I had no idea what any of it meant, but I had to try something. "Let her go, Harlow. You can still stop this," I shouted, stepping towards the panel. His laughter echoed around me, dismissive and cold. "You think you can change anything? You're already too late." The tremors intensified, and I heard voices outside the door, more footsteps approaching. My pulse quickened. I was running out of time. In a split-second decision, I lunged for the control panel. My fingers flew over the buttons, feeling reckless as I pressed down indiscriminately. The screens around me flashed wild patterns as alarms blared louder in response. "No!" Harlow yelled, lunging towards me, but I ducked out of the way just in time. As I pressed one last button, the lights above blinked faster and then went dark, plunging us into a chaotic shadow. The emergency alarms shrieked, reverberating through the walls. In the darkness, I could barely see Harlow's furious expression as he tried to regain control. "I'll destroy you for this," he spat, his silhouette looming just out of reach. Then, there was a crack of blinding light above me, illuminating the room like a flashbulb, and I caught sight of patient 3782 once more. But she wasn't still anymore. She was sitting up, eyes wide and glowing fiercely, the strange energy around her pulsing faster, almost alive. "Help me!" The command came through her lips like a war cry, but it felt different, authoritative. In an instant, she seemed to draw the energy from the machines, and the floor shook more violently beneath us. My heart raced. Whatever was happening was no longer just about me or Dr. Harlow. "I have to get out," I thought, desperation clawing inside me. The door burst open, revealing dark figures coming into the room. Security personnel, or something worse, I couldn't tell. But one thing was clear. Chaos was spilling into the facility, and I was right in the middle of it. Before I could make another move, a surge of power erupted from patient 3782, throwing Harlow back against the wall. The force knocked the breath from my lungs. And just like that, I realized I had unleashed something I couldn't control. I turned, but the only thing I found was a path blocked by shadows, the figures drawing closer. I couldn't stay. Whatever had been unleashed would only lead to more danger. In that moment of uncertain resolve, I bolted for the exit, racing against whatever new monster lurked behind me. The nightmare was just beginning, and now I was at the center of it. I sprinted down the dim corridor, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I could hear voices shouting behind me, frantic and angry. The chaos from the control room reverberated through the facility, amplifying my fear. Every shadow seemed to morph into a threat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were closing in. I turned a corner and skidded to a halt. Ahead was another set of doors, but trapped between the doors and me was a group of security. Their expressions were fierce, and they were yelling into their radios, weapons drawn. Panic washed over me. I needed to escape, but I couldn't just run into their line of fire. I whipped around, looking for another way out, when I heard a low hum building behind me. It drew my attention back, toward the control room. Patient 3782's energy had transformed into something tangible. It felt as if she were calling to me, thrumming through the walls, urging me to return. Don't go back, I told myself. But curiosity gnawed at my insides. Was she even still in there? I needed answers, not just escape. I backed away, searching for any break in the chaos, when I spotted an emergency stairwell door to my left, the last chance for freedom. I bolted toward it, throwing open the heavy door and slamming it shut behind me. The metal staircase spiraled down into darkness. I hesitated. It felt like a leap into the unknown, but there was no time for second thoughts. I dashed down, each step echoing in the confined space like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the alarm stopped. An eerie silence enveloped me. I paused, scanning the darkness around me. Had they given up? Unlikely. I quickened my pace, desperate to put distance between myself and what I had just escaped. As I reached the bottom, the door creaked open into a dim underground corridor. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I felt like a ghost lingering in a forgotten place. But then I heard it whispers, soft yet distinct. Each step I took brought them closer, a chilling melody that made the hair on my arms stand. The voices were familiar, haunting in their urgency. They sounded like the employees I'd seen before, but their tones were different. The words were muddled, like a garbled warning. That can't be good, I muttered to myself. The urge to flee intensified, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I rounded a corner, and there it was, a huge chamber lined with glass windows, the kind that overlooked other labs. I peered inside, heart pounding as I stared at rows of dormant beds. My stomach twisted. They were filled with patients, just like 3782. But the sight was unsettling. The patients were all connected to machines, their bodies thrumming with the same energy I had felt earlier. A sinister glow illuminated the room, pulsing with an almost seductive rhythm. In that moment of horror, I saw that familiar figure standing in front of a control panel. Dr. Harlow. He was flanked by two security personnel, firing off commands with a mad gleam in his eyes. "Activate the process," he shouted, and with that, the glow intensified. I felt the dread crawl up my spine. I needed to know what was happening, but I didn't know how to intervene. Then my eyes caught a glimpse of something on the floor. A small device, half hidden under the shadows, a keycard. That's when I saw it. The faint outline of the door marked exit in the far wall next to Harlow. Hope surged within me, but I needed that card to escape. With the drumming of the chaos behind me and the rising specter of danger in front, I had just seconds to make a choice. Would I risk it all for one last chance to save them, or was I already too late? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment press down on my chest. The keycard lay feet away, and it seemed to shimmer in the eerie light like a mirage. It could be my ticket out, but Harlow and his guards would be my obstacles. Thinking fast, I ducked behind a nearby column, hoping the shadows would hide me. I peered around the edge, scanning the room. Harlow was fixated on the control panel, tapping commands into the screen with fervor, completely immersed in whatever sinister task he was orchestrating. Those men with guns stood alert, their eyes darting around, but I knew their attention was mainly on the display before them. My mind raced as I formulated a plan. I couldn't just grab the card and make a run for it. I needed a distraction. I looked up at the flickering lights, inspiration sparking. There was a maintenance panel just above, slightly ajar, the wires inside exposed. If I could get it to short circuit, It might just create enough noise to pull the guard's focus. I glanced around for something to use. My eyes flicked to a discarded metal chair propped against the wall. It was heavy, but I had to move fast. I crouched low and bolted toward it, my heart pounding. I snatched the chair and lifted it, moving in quiet desperation toward the base of the paneled as I reached up to shove the metal into the panel. My fingers grazed the live wires. Sparks shot out, and the lights buzzed angrily before plunging the room into darkness. I froze, waiting for the chaos to erupt. The guards shouted in confusion. "Check the control room." One barked. I heard shoes pounding against the floor as they dispersed, leaving Harlow alone with his frenzied machine. Seizing the opportunity, I darted toward the floor near the control panel. I could see the shimmering keycard now, just a few feet away. With a racing heart, I crouched low and scooped it up, careful not to make a sound. Then I spotted something else, the emergency red button blinking on the control panel. It was large, ominous, and completely inviting. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity screamed at me. What if that stops him? Suddenly, the door I had seen marked "Exit" was calling to me. I needed to make a choice. Take the chance to potentially save those patients, or make my escape. Just as I turned to back away from the panel, the lights flickered back on. Harlow whipped around, eyes narrowing on me, fury etched across his face. "You! Stop right there." My heart raced. I clutched the keycard tightly and bolted toward the exit. If I could just reach that door, I might still have a chance. But Harlow's voice rang out like a whip crack. "Get her." I sprinted, adrenaline surging through me. Every step was a gamble against capture. I could hear the footsteps pounding behind me, getting closer. The cold metal of the door's handle felt reassuring as I yanked it open and dashed outside into the unknown. But once I stepped through, I found myself in a vast empty space that stretched beyond the dim corridor, a factory of horrors awaiting my discovery. A chill trickled down my spine. I thought I escaped, but what lay ahead could be worse than before. I had to keep moving. There was no turning back now. The moment I stepped into the factory, my instincts screamed at me to find cover. The air was thick, carrying the scent of cold metal mixed with something like burnt rubber. It was unnerving, and all the hairs on my arms stood on end. I glanced over my shoulder. No sign of Harlow or his guards yet, but I couldn't stay put. I hesitated before choosing a narrow path on my right. It seemed to wind away from the main area, potentially leading to a safer spot. As I moved deeper into the shadows, I was acutely aware of the distant hum of machinery. The rhythmic clanking felt like it was breathing, almost alive. It reminded me of the unsettling environment I had just fled, the walls seeming to close in. I pressed on, passing abandoned workstations lined with dusty equipment. Flickering overhead lights cast strange shadows, making me jump at every movement. I spotted a door ahead labeled storage. It offered a glimmer of hope for a place to hide. I slipped inside and shut the door quietly, leaning against it as I took a moment to catch my breath. Inside, a series of shelves cluttered with boxes and equipment loomed in front of me. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and I could see only a fraction of the room. I quickly scanned for anything I could use: a weapon, a tool, or even a clue about what Harlow was up to. There had to be something of value in this mess. That's when I saw it. In the corner, half hidden under a pile of old medical supplies, lay a small, battered laptop. I approached cautiously, a mix of curiosity and dread swirling in my gut. If it still had power, maybe it held information about the experiments happening in this place, or about Harlow himself. I knelt down and hit the power button. The screen flickered, illuminating the dark space. As it booted up, I heard a faint clicking noise. My heart sank when I realized it was accompanied by shuffling footsteps just outside my door. Panic flooded my veins. They were close. Quickly, the laptop loaded, and I was greeted by a login screen. I needed to find a way in, and fast. I glanced around, desperate. I grabbed a nearby folder, hoping it might contain something useful. My hands trembled as I rifled through the papers. Just scribbles and charts covered in smudged ink. I didn't have time to waste. Then, a thought struck me. I couldn't believe I was considering it, but if I had to buy some time, I could try the most common passwords I'd ever come across in my old tech job. I highlighted the keys: admin, password, and 123456. Each time I hit enter, my heart would drop a little more, and the footsteps grew louder. Come on, come on," I muttered, in desperate silence. The third attempt sent the screen blinking. I bit my lip and readied myself for what I hoped was a lifeline. Then everything went dark. The screen went blank, and the lights in the storage room flickered ominously. There was a loud thud against the door. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a game of hide-and-seek anymore. This was life or death. I had one option left: prepare to fight back, or pray that my luck somehow turned in my favor. I barely had time to think before the door slammed open, and suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. I rushed to my feet as Dr. Harlow stormed through the open door, flanked by a couple of security goons. His eyes burned with rage, and I could see the desperation etched into his features as he shouted, "You think you can hide from me? You're done playing games. Get back!" I yelled, adrenaline surging. The laptop lay forgotten on the floor behind me. I didn't know what I'd hoped to find, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. Panic clocked my thoughts as I weighed my options, too few to count. The guards moved closer, but I bolted past them, ducking to avoid their grasp. "We don't have to do this," I shouted, my pulse pounding in my ears. I could feel the heat of Harlow's anger behind me, threatening to consume everything I had left. In the narrow confines of the storage room, I maneuvered past piles of forgotten equipment, shoving a stack of boxes into the path of my pursuers. The crash echoed through the space, causing them to stumble back. I darted to a narrow opening at the back of the room, pressing myself against the cold wall, heart racing as my thoughts spiraled in relentless loops. But then another sound broke through the chaos. The hum of machinery outside the storage room grew louder, a cacophony of jars rattling and metal clanging. I grimaced. Whatever was happening in this facility had crossed over from the experimental into something other entirely. "Stop her!" Harlow bellowed, and the two guards lunged. I used every ounce of will and fear to propel myself forward. My hands gripped the edge of the doorway, desperate to pull free, the cold metal of the door frame biting back as I wrenched myself away. Just as I cleared the opening, I heard them stumble. I didn't stop to see if they'd recovered. I tore down the hall, the walls blurring by. The air was thick with an electric hum, a pulse that pulled me forward, urging me to escape, that I could hear people still shouting, orders being barked through the facility. I wasn't sure if they sought me out specifically, or if it was the chaos I had stirred that drew them. It didn't matter. I ran until I could no longer feel the fatigue in my legs, just the instinct to survive. The corridor opened into a larger space, and I skidded to a halt. Before me stood towering glass panels, revealing the patients I had glimpsed earlier, all still trapped. Their forms flickered in the dim light, an unsettling glow illuminating their eyes, bodies trapped in some nightmarish stasis. But then my attention snagged on something familiar, a hint of movement. There she was again, patient 3782, now among them. Her expression was vacant, almost expectant, and for a second, I hesitated. "Were you always here?" I wondered silently. Was this how she had warned me, or was it too late for her? I had to make a choice: help her or keep running. Just then, the lab door burst open again, and two more security guards appeared, ready to take me down. The snarling commands echoed, my heartbeat drumming louder in my chest. Time slipped away, but instead of feeling the weight of it on my shoulders, something strange began to unfold. As the guards advanced, the air grew thick again, and the hum escalated into a roaring crescendo. I instinctively stepped toward patient 3782, feeling a surge of connection, a pull that anchored me. In that moment of fleeting clarity, her gaze met mine again, and I felt that energy surrounding her shift. "Help me," she urged, but the voice resonated with a power that transcended human limitation. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the air, stretching toward the guards, paralyzing them. They halted, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and fear. Before I could process the transformation, the chaotic rhythm escalated to an almost violent crescendo, filled with piercing shrieks and explosive echoes of machinery gone berserk. The lights above flickered violently as the entire facility seemed to vibrate. Suddenly, every window shattered simultaneously, tendrils of fractured glass exploding outward. That I was not only afraid, I was alive. And for an instant, I understood. She wasn't merely a victim anymore. Patient 3782 had harnessed something darker than Dr. Harlow ever intended. With the guards still bowled over, this was my chance. I wheeled toward the exit ahead, the sound of screams and shouts dissolving into chaotic whispers that intermingled with the hum of energy. I could feel it brushing against my skin, urging me to leave behind whatever horror had unraveled in this place. That I sprinted from that terrible lab, pushing through any remnants of despair while the facility began to implode, consumed by that very energy that had once held so many captive, hers included. And yet the thrill of survival stirred within me the dark question of what had really happened and who or what had been unleashed. As I raced to escape, that I staggered outside, collapsing on the ground as I gasped for air. The night sky felt vast, full of stars that pulsed like candles against the chaos I had survived. But I still heard the whispers in the distance, lingering in my mind. The danger was over for now, but I couldn't shake the uncertainty, the lingering question of how much control I still had over my own fate. That I escaped the facility, but what had I truly released? I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if Patient 3782 and Drive Harlow continue their twisted dance, or if the darkness has consumed them both entirely. I guess I'll never know.